West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Tonight, a senior U.S. defense official warning that Russian forces have shown a willingness to hit civilian targets on purpose. The mayor of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, telling me that Putin is intentionally killing civilians. On Russian state media, though, wow, it's a totally different picture. It's like a humanitarian effort down there. Nick Robertson is out front with this report from Moscow.
On Russia's state TV, audiences are only being told what the Kremlin wants them to know about the war in Ukraine. This new Russian army video shows troops handing out humanitarian aid. They claim Russian forces are giving civilians safe passage from the fighting, a message reinforced in President Putin's latest state TV speech.
Our military have provided corridors in all areas of combat action.
The terrible reality the rest of the world sees: shelling of civilians, suffering, death and destruction. Never gets aired on Russian state TV. And many Russians believe their government that the war was forced on them by Ukraine, backed by NATO.
I know the truth. This was a forced measure on our side. After what Russia went through in World War II, it's madness to believe we want war.
I see what's on TV when I'm getting ready for work. We try not to get too involved in it because we've got enough of our own problems.
Some do care enough to reach beyond state TV, but even then, they're not convinced by what they see.
Yes, I have heard that some civilians, even children, have died, but I'm not sure I can believe it because there is fake news. They are making money.
Obedient anchors on state TV never question the Kremlin's version of facts and reinforce its tropes about denazification. No mention that President Zelensky is Jewish or Russian missiles killed civilians near a Holocaust memorial in Kyiv. Even so, some mostly younger Russians see through their government's lies, get their news from friends, independent and social media.
Almost all of us are understanding this thing, that there is a lot of lie around. So we do not know what's happening.
I think this is a crime, an aggression against a neighboring country. Our government invaded, now they are killing people.
That's awful. What can we think about it? Normal people understand everything, but we can't do anything. Because we're afraid, like everyone else.
The government is so worried independent media could challenge their narrative. In the past few days, it shut down 2 outlets and is right now preparing a law that would criminalize what it calls fake media. It could carry a maximum 15-year jail sentence. Despite the Kremlin's best efforts at controlling the narrative, many Russians have taken to the streets, angered by Putin's war. More than 7,500 people arrested so far, including this elderly lady at a protest in St. Petersburg Wednesday. And no surprise, this video has yet to be shown on state media. Yeah, right now, the truth is perhaps the most dangerous thing for President Putin in Russia, which is why the White House is so concerned that the Kremlin is stifling the independent message, cracking down, shutting down independent media. In fact, CNN has learned that the Biden administration has held at least interviews with at least 7 Russian language outlets, Echo, Moscow Radio, and other independent stations among them. Echo Moscow Radio was one of those shut down in the past couple of days. TV Rain was another. I spoke just a few weeks ago with the anchor there. She said that every day they knew they were living on borrowed time. Well, that borrowed time's up because the Kremlin's shutting them down, because they cover the protests, they cover and try and cover the facts. And now we know and see what's happened to them. Aaron?
Nick, thank you very much. And I want to go now to Mike Latovka, who fled his home in Kharkiv and traveled for more than 30 hours to a safer location for now in Western Ukraine with his family and his girlfriend. And Mike, I so much appreciate your time. I have to imagine it's hard for you to hear a piece like you just heard. Our Nick Robertson in Moscow speaking to Russians about the invasion. Many saying they're against the war, but many also believing what they see on Russian TV, asking a woman about civilian casualties, and she says, I'm not sure I believe it because there is fake news. There were others who said the same. Mike, what do you want the Russian people to know?
The main thing I'd love people to know is that their country is obviously the aggressor. There's no such thing as a military operation that they're being told. There is no such thing as countries or nationalities here, Russian-speaking people who need to be saved. This is absolutely clear even from my personal experience. My girlfriend's father lives in Russia, and in this situation, he wants literally nothing to do with supporting her or her mom and her sister, who are right now under fire in Kharkiv, which is being constantly bombarded. Kharkiv right now is like the Stalingrad of that time. And the pressure of the media in Russia is so strong that people who are actually from here, they're from Ukraine, they go there, and after living there for some time, they assimilate and they just take everything at face value. It's so strong that, in fact, my girlfriend reached out to him just for financial support in this case. She didn't reach out to him with some kind of proof that, okay, this is what you're doing is wrong. She just said, like, look, we have a military situation here, we have a war, and can you help us in some way, at least financially? He said, to quote it directly, helping you financially will be considered treason here. And that was the end of the conversation. It's very sad that this is dividing people so much in this way.
I am so sorry. I'm so sorry for your girlfriend and her family. I mean, it's impossible to truly understand. I do know, Mike, that you documented your journey when you left Kharkiv, and I spoke to the mayor earlier this hour. You know, he's there, obviously, those air raid sirens. He's hearing as he speaks and talks about them. Extraordinary. He uses the word enormous number now of civilian casualties. I know you were incredibly lucky to have left there, but it has been an arduous journey to where you are now, and obviously only a stop perhaps on where you may be going. You had to shelter in a metro station. You had to deal with airstrikes. How was your journey thus far? And I want to emphasize thus far because obviously you're now far from home.
Yes, it was long, and it was also a sort of a waiting game. Since the first day after the fact that we understood that, we're in this for the long haul, there are going to be bombardments, they're not going to stop, we were waiting for a way to get out. In my case, I've got a big family. I've got 4 sisters, single mom, and my girlfriend who were living in Kharkiv and Kiev. Some in Kharkiv, some in Kiev. Both of these places are really melting pots right now. And if Kiev is kind of still holding its own, it seems that Russia is purposefully trying to make an example out of Kharkiv by just bombing everything possible there. They don't even care. They're not even trying to show that they're bombing strategic units. So essentially, on the second day, we were just waiting for a way to get out because we'd already been sitting in bomb shelters and the metro for some time. And luckily for me and my family and some other people who were in Kharkiv, a friend of mine gave me a contact of an IT company that was to do an evacuation effort from Kharkiv. They sent a few buses there, and we were able to go down through a previously checked and more or less safe route. We went down south to Poltava, and then through a few other cities, which I would prefer not to give away right now, just could be sensitive information. But eventually we made our way to western Ukraine, to Lviv Oblast, and we are currently here with my family and contemplating, as for the girls, we're contemplating the ladies if they will continue going on further. One of my sisters has already gone on further, and she's at this moment as we speak on the border with Hungary, if I'm not mistaken, and my other two sisters could be close to follow them, together with my mom and my youngest sister, who is only 5 years old. At this point, I would not be able to leave the country, even if I wanted to, because there is a mandatory conscription, and men between the ages of 18 and 60 cannot leave. Plus, while I'm here, I do believe that there is use that I can bring here, mainly with information and logistics.
Well, gosh, you are in my thoughts, as is everyone in your family. And your girlfriend, I know it will be so hard for you if they leave, but of course, may indeed be the right and the safest thing to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
The main thing I suppose I'd like to add, just if I could, to finish up, any effort that can be done is helpful. If there are people who are just around the world who have even a free spare minute, they can reach out and they can join. Companies around the world, we're so happy to hear that many of them have taken this effort to stop business with Russia, even at the expense of maybe some losses. We're really sad to hear that some companies like Coca-Cola and other respected ones that I used to really look up to are not following this effort, but we really urge them to. This is a way that you can actually help Ukraine directly. And you can also help with these efforts that are being taken with IT to DDoS some of the infrastructure there. I really appreciate being able to get this across, and thank you so much for helping us share our story and giving Ukraine a voice.
It is Friday, the 4th of March of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunnar the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, how are you? We have not been vaporized, as far as we know, by any, nuke devices, though I think that there's a specific autocrat who's trying to make it that way. I don't know what's up with this guy. I know that they want to control the power grid in Ukraine, especially the one around Kyiv, so they can do what they're doing. But I guess they're calling it denazifying Ukraine. Yeah, okay. I guess that's just a nice way of saying they want to get rid of the Jewish guy. Okay. And I can't go on without mentioning the Russian state media viewers who sound a lot like Fox viewers on everything. Everything. Yeah, I know what the truth is. I watch Russian state media. Oh, really? Do you now? Right down to the fake news. You know that whenever anybody uses the term fake news, they're trying to hide their own accountability. So 15 years if you call the war in Crimea, the war in Ukraine. Yeah, let's not forget about Crimea. The war in Ukraine is a war. You can't call it an invasion. You can't talk about Ukrainian civilians being killed. No. 15 years. Because that's called fake news. All right. Well, we all know that Donnie would have just handed Ukraine over to Vlad, and we probably would have taken what was left of our service personnel in Ramstein and whatever jet fighters were left there and helped Vlad out. because we have to denazify Ukraine, which is, once again, a nice way of saying we got to get rid of that Jewish guy. Denazify Ukraine. You know, Vladimir Putin is one hell of an anti-Semite. Let's not forget about that. Jeez. There's a reason why there was a mass exodus from the Soviet Union when the State of Israel was, formed. A big reason. Not only because it was a dream for, a few thousand years of having their own autonomous nation, but of how terribly Jewish people were and are treated in that part of the world. I'm just trying to make it clear here. All right. Denazify. Give me a break. Yeah, and I love the one lady who said, what happened in World War II? Why would Russia want war? Exactly. Why would Russia want war? You have to ask your question why Vlad wants it then, don't you, lady? But that question never arises in the brainwashed brain. The captive mind? No. So, kind of makes you wonder why Fox News is continuing to pretty much promote the Russian line, at least on Tucker Carlson's show. I know that they're kind of stepping back because it is, after all, a money-making operation. But that's the magic of the market now, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Well, they want to try to make their own magic, like we all do. Yes, we do. So, we have that going on for us, and it looks like since the Russians have taken over the largest nuclear facility in Europe, so we don't have anything to worry about now. No. They're just going to try to shut it off so that the people in Kyiv freeze. But in the process, they won't know how to shut it down properly, and they're going to melt that core, and it's going to be worse than Fukushima. Everybody says, it's so irresponsible to say there's going to be 10 times worse than Chernobyl. I know it'll be 100 times worse if we're not careful. Melt the core. Only bad things happen. Remember that. So I'm not too sure that this crackpot crew of Russian fighters know how to shut down that nuclear facility so that they can shut off the power. They're going to melt the core, and they'll say it was, an accident. Oops. All right. I am a little concerned because I thought NATO was formed to prevent exactly what is going on right now. But now we can't use NATO because it might start World War III. I got some advice or words for you, folks. If you're afraid that our involvement is going to bring on World War III, it's too late. It is already World War III. And I'm not being rhetorical, from back in the day during Reagan's time when they said, we've been in World War III since 1945. I know. But I'm talking about right now. Because we got a guy who doesn't care about mutually approved destruction. I won't use my nukes because, we'll destroy ourselves, and you won't use your nukes because it'll destroy the world. Vlad does not care. Mutually assured destruction. He doesn't care. Bring it on. So you're telling me that if we set up an Iron Dome over Ukraine, that's going to trigger Vlad to do worse? It doesn't matter what we do. He will always do worse. So we better start planning. And standing by and letting it happen is not planning. I'd like to see it stopped. And I don't want some German type strategy where you try to blow up the guy at his 40-foot desk. That will be a failure. I do know that Vlad is the only person in all of Russia who is not forced to move a piano that he doesn't own into a 5-story condo window that he doesn't live at. The only person in Russia that doesn't have to do that. So we don't have to worry about him mysteriously falling out of a 5-story window, do we? which actually kind of reminds me of Lindsey Graham's request. Isn't there a Brutus in Russia? And he's the one that brought up the Schaufenbergers, the German guys that failed, by the way, and who were then rooted out. All of them were executed. All of the people that were involved with them in any capacity were also executed. And, they let the wife go. So I don't consider that stopping Vlad, because it didn't stop Hitler, and he continued to kill people for another year and a half or whatever it was. Maybe longer. So, I think we need a new paradigm. But Lindsey Graham coming out and saying, somebody's better do something like they should off that guy. And now Twitter is trying to figure out what to do. Because they banned Trump for essentially saying, hey, we got to kill the sovereign leader of another nation. We're not supposed to say that. I mean, we can think it. Just don't say it, Lindsey. But there wasn't a war that Lindsey is seeing that he doesn't want to send your kids to fight. And I'm not saying that we should stand by and let Vlad take what he wants. I'm not into war. That's why I would like to stop Vlad from doing what he's doing. No war means no allowing Vlad to wage war. So there might be a little bit of tough love involved here, isn't there? Now, I know what Lindsey was getting at. Maybe he was being rhetorical, but it would be nice if there was some sort of advisor who would be able to tell Vlad you've gone far enough. The only problem is that person gets sent to a gulag. If you get 15 years for calling the war in Ukraine, what are they going to do to a general who says, sir? Sir? Where have I heard that before? Sir, I think we need to not do this. This is like very much against world opinion. And Vlad will say, hey, to the gulag with you. Except in a bit more forceful terms, I would think. All right. Well, we got the snoozing sous chef snoozing away in the background because he's working hard. He's a hard worker, and we love him for it. But we do have a curated show for you today, and why don't we break it down for you? It's Friday, Blue Moon Spears Fridays. Yes, the French 77, of course, is the martini of choice here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. With that stated, on the rest of the menu, the EPA confirmed the filters distributed in Benton Harbor, Michigan during the city's recent lead water crisis worked properly. Well, that's good news. Sean Hannity's former Fox News director has been arrested in London and charged with violating Crimea-related sanctions. And the Peace Corps plans to start sending volunteers overseas again. After 2 years from the pandemic, they weren't being able to do that. Well, now they are. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Germany urged the UN Rights Office to publish its Uyghur report. Talk about genocide. And Biden will meet the Finnish leader at the White House today as Russia rattles its European neighbors. Rattles. Mm-hmm. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and she's been very busy, which is good because we all have to pay our bills. And thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do here. If you out there in Radioland would look across the page, our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the left from that chat room link, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso coffee drink once a month, buy some coffee once a month, and we will be able to stretch those dollars really beyond compare. And then that allows us to pay our bills, which then allows us to fly under the radar. They're still using that technology. Isn't that weird? But anyway, we're able to fly under the radar and continue this resistance against dark forces arrayed against not only the United States of America, but representative democracy around the world. We are a bulwark against that. Though small we be, mighty we are. And we have you to thank for that. And thank you for your generosity. We need it. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. And he's very busy too. Thanks, Tom, for everything that you do around here. And let's see. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. And then get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. Of course, as you know, the show notes and links are where you can find the real reportage. And that's the only way to know, is looking at the real reportage. Fake news, that's only from people who don't want to be held accountable for their own actions. All right. And let's see. Oh, yes. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. And, of course, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Deep Archive, as well as the library of Netroots Radio shows over these many, almost 11 years, can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. And then, we'll get the actual Netroots Radio link up. The West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and I might mention the Justice Department, is also linked up for the Deep Archive in the appropriate diaries, or show notes and links, as we like to call them. All righty. Let's get into this first offering here that we have offered up for you in this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. You are in the Bistro Cafe part. Save room, because we have the amuse-bouche coming at the end. We do things a little bit different. Amuse-bouche usually comes first. We do it at the end here. But at the chef's table, and so there's still more to come. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Michael Phyllis out of the Associated Press. The filters distributed in Benton Harbor, Michigan during the city's recent lead water crisis worked properly, according to a study state officials said was conducted to give residents assurance. Michigan officials said the study was done out of an abundance of caution after residents and advocates in Benton Harbor slammed the state's slow response to the city's lead problem and requested more aggressive actions, including a study of the filters. We found that properly operated filters were successful in reducing lead considerably and consistently, said Tara Fong, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Water Division Director for the region that includes Michigan. But Fong noted the agency also found the filters were not being used properly in many cases and that public outreach could help address the problem. The filters were distributed in early 2019 after tests revealed high lead levels in the tap water of Benton Harbor. After elevated lead levels persisted, residents and activists raised concerns that the majority black city was being ignored, even in the wake of the crisis in Flint. Soon after, officials promised stronger corrective measures, including a filter study. Oh, you mean they didn't get rid of the city council and supplement them with a professional city manager? Oh, okay. Well, back to the story at hand. In the meantime, State officials recommended residents rely mostly on free bottled water, leading to residents waiting in long lines at distribution sites. State officials said water distribution is now offered daily, and that cases can be delivered to residents who have difficulty picking them up. The study released yesterday, Thursday, by the EPA found all samples from nearly 200 homes with properly used pitcher and water faucet filters had low lead levels that were within federal guidelines. No lead was detected in the vast majority of samples. I use the 0 filter. A lot of people like Brita, but that's 3. I'm going with a 5 filter process. But, hey. The filters that were distributed in Benton Harbor are certified to reduce lead, unlike many standard at-home water filters, and are supposed to be used with cold water. You should always do that. After you've run your hot water, you should run your cold water for about 30 seconds or so. Otherwise, you're kind of leaching lead that might be in the pipes on out into your glass. I like to filter it first, of course. Michigan officials said, filter cartridges need to be replaced once they expire. One nice thing about the 0 filter is that they do give you a particulate meter in which you can find out what particulate matter might be floating around in your water, and when it reaches a certain level, you get another filter. All right. Now, Michigan officials said recent tests show lead levels in the city's tap water are within federal thresholds and that there are no other contamination issues. But they said the state will continue providing free bottled water until work replacing the city's lead service lines is completed by the spring of 2023. Larry Neumeister of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A former CNBC and Fox News employee, is that all he was, has been arrested in London for his work as a television producer for a Russian media baron tied to aggression in Ukraine over the past years, particularly in Crimea, U.S. prosecutors announced. Jack Hannity, age 71, also known as John, was arrested in London on February 3rd in what U.S. Attorney Damian Williams described as the first ever criminal indictment charging a violation of U.S. sanctions resulting from Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea. Oh, justice moves slow, doesn't it? Hannity's lawyers in New York and London did not immediately respond to a request for comment. If he is successfully extradited, the sanctions charge carries a potential penalty of up to 20 years in prison. Williams said Hannity worked for years for Russian oligarch Konstantin Malyovayev, the founder of a Russian Orthodox news channel, Tsargrad TV, even after U.S. sanctions banned U.S. citizens from working for or doing business with him. The Justice Department will do everything it can to stamp out Russian aggression and interference, Assistant Attorney General Matthew G. Olson said in a news release. Olson said that after Malyovayev was sanctioned for threatening Ukraine and providing financial support to the Donetsk separatist region, Hannity knowingly chose to help Malyovayev spread his destabilizing messages by establishing or attempting to establish TV networks in Russia, Bulgaria, and Greece in violation of those sanctions. An indictment returned in Manhattan federal court alleged that Hannity worked directly for and for the benefit of Malyovayev for at least 2013 through at least 2017. According to his LinkedIn page, Hannity worked as a director for CNBC for over a year in 1995 before joining the Fox News channel as a director from July 1996 to August of 2011. He said he was on the channel's startup team, and what this article does not spell out is that he was Sean Hannity's director. Lisa Ratke of the AP brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Peace Corps will start sending volunteers overseas again in mid-March after it evacuated them from posts around the world 2 years ago due to the COVID-19 pandemic. An initial group of new volunteers and those who were evacuated in March of 2020, as the coronavirus began to spread across the globe, will go to Zambia and the Dominican Republic this month, according to a Peace Corps statement. The Peace Corps plans to return volunteers to their posts throughout the year based on the number of COVID-19 cases and hospital capacity in the host country, and the Peace Corps' ability to transport volunteers to medical evacuation centers if there's an emergency. It is currently recruiting for 24 posts. Over the past 2 years, our primary goal has been to return volunteers to the more than 60 countries they are enthusiastically awaiting their return. And we have weathered the waves and variants of the COVID-19 situation at each post and re-engineered Peace Corps systems, policies, and procedures to align with today's reality, Peace Corps CEO Carol Spahn said. Besides their primary work on local issues, volunteers will be involved in COVID-19 response and recovery. In Zambia, volunteers will coordinate with local leaders and partner ministries to provide COVID-19 education and promote access to vaccinations for communities, officials said. In the Dominican Republic, the focus will be on helping communities overcome issues exacerbated by the pandemic, such as increased school dropout rates, literary skills, and preparing young adults for work. The Peace Corps marks its 61st anniversary this week. 2 years ago, it had 7,000 volunteers in 62 countries when they were evacuated and sent back to the U.S. Since those evacuations, the Peace Corps has used volunteers to help with the COVID-19 response domestically and developed a virtual service pilot program. Not before March 2020 had the organization, founded by President John F. Kennedy, needed to evacuate all its volunteers at the same time. More than 240,000 Americans have served as Peace Corps volunteers in scores of countries since the program was created in 1961. The aim is to help the countries meet their development needs through a variety of programs, from education to health and agricultural programs, while helping promote a better understanding of Americans. Typical service lasts 2 years after a training period. Indeed. Well, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Crossroads. Historically, there's been a decided slant in coming-of-age stories towards male characters of fraternity age or younger. Now, a twice Oscar-nominated foreign film, The Worst Person in the World, joins Best Picture nominee Licorice Pizza with a serious take on female characters in search of themselves, neither of them being teenagers. Our subject here is Julie, who's a medical student when we first meet her, but who goes through more career changes than love interests over the course of the film. Those interests are central here, of course, the most significant being Axel, a well-known comic book writer 15 years Julie's senior. The other is Ivan, a married barista who she meets at a wedding party she crashes and who shares her desire not to have kids. He separates from his wife after she becomes hilariously woke. As you might guess, Julie and Ivan don't live happily ever after from this point. In the final chapters, the film is presented in 12 chapters with prologue and epilogue. We get a looming existential threat, which always serves to heighten the stakes. Joachim Trier's fresh directing places this one a cut above. A Run Lola Run-like freeze-frame scene where only Julie is in action running between lovers is pitch perfect, as is a party scene after she's gotten into some shrooms where she sees her face on an older body with a child. Renate Reinsva won Best Actress at Cannes this year with her performance in this one, and it's easy to see why. With minor quibbles being that age-different relationships are more complicated than numbers, and that we've seen the love and death thing before, The Worst Person in the World is wonderful and stands as a reminder of the transitional nature of life. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Occasional aches and pains are an expected part of life, but for many people, pain is a constant companion. Dr. Chad Helmick is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to manage chronic pain. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you.
Chad, how many people in the U.S. suffer from chronic pain?
In 2016, 50 million adults had chronic pain, which is pain on most or every day in the past 6 months. More interesting, though, is that 20 million people have high-impact chronic pain, which is chronic pain that also limits their work or life activities on most or every day in the past 6 months. This is a problem because chronic pain is associated not only with symptoms, but with anxiety and depression, reduced quality of life, and the risk of opioid problems.
What are the most common causes of chronic pain?
The most common causes generally relate to bones and joints, like low back pain and arthritis, but there are many other causes: headaches, sickle cell disease, fibromyalgia, surgery and injuries, and many, many others.
Is chronic pain more common in any particular group of people?
Yes, it occurs at all ages, but it's more common in older middle-aged adults and in the oldest old, 85 and older. It's also more common in women, poor people, and those who live in rural areas.
How is chronic pain treated?
Well, the first thing to do is to get a diagnosis, which can help guide treatment. But the thinking about chronic pain now is that it becomes a chronic disease by itself, regardless of the cause, and that can cause significant problems. The real goal in management is to have a manageable level of pain, not to get rid of all pain. There's several steps that can be taken, and these are sometimes difficult to do because of barriers to access. but it makes sense to do the simplest and safest things first. And these are non-drug steps. Things like physical activity. Walking is perfectly good to help reduce pain. Also, self-management education can give you some confidence in managing chronic pain when you're on your own. There's also physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological therapy, better sleep, which usually means less alcohol, and seeing a chiropractor or getting biofeedback and massage. If that's not enough, non-opioid drugs like Tylenol or Motrin and Advil or naproxen or Aleve can help. If those don't work, then it's time to consider something stronger. Sometimes that's opioids, but there's not great evidence that opioids are good for long-term pain in most people.
Do you have any advice for people suffering from chronic pain?
Well, it's important to work with a variety of providers who are working together to help you. The goal, again, is manageable pain so you can live a productive life. This can include physical therapy, most people can walk, to treat any underlying depression or anxiety, and to avoid further injuries. Finally, the National Pain Strategy is laying out a strategic roadmap to improve pain management system in this country.
Where can listeners get more information about managing chronic pain?
Listeners can go to the NIH website, nih.gov, and type in National Pain Strategy.
Thanks, Chad. I've been talking today with Dr. Chad Helmick about ways to manage chronic pain. If you're experiencing daily pain, talk with your healthcare provider to ensure you have the correct diagnosis and know how to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
This Civil Liberties Minute is about packing and cracking in Alabama.
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
In January, 3 federal judges, including 2 Trump appointees, unanimously ruled that Alabama's new congressional district map drawn by the legislature illegally diluted the voting power of black voters. But in February, the Supreme Court, 5-4, reinstated the congressional district lines that the legislature had drawn. What the Alabama legislature did is called packing and cracking. Packing, that is, packing as many black voters into one district as possible, and then cracking, that is, cracking the remaining black voters into as many districts as possible so they can't affect the outcome in any other race. Given that black voters make up 27% of the electorate, if the lines hadn't been subjected to racist gerrymandering, 2 of the 7 districts would have had a majority of black voters. Instead, there will be 1. There's a pattern here. In 2013, the Supreme Court gutted more than half of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. In 2021, it knifed most of the rest of that crucial law. So, in 2022, the phrase packing and cracking, in addition to its application to voting, may resonate more broadly, with cracking being the sound of democracy falling apart, and packing is packing up the remnants.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
During the American colonial era, women remained legally dependent on men and were not allowed under the law to fully participate in political life. Women were typically not allowed to vote in the colonies or hold political office. Colonial laws limited women's right to own property and to manage their own legal and personal affairs. Laws varied among the colonies, but married women usually had the legal status of underage children. They lost most of their legal identity to their husbands under a legal doctrine called coverture. According to English law, husband and wife are one person. The very being or legal existence of the woman is suspended during the marriage. These policies were mostly continued after independence in 1776 and the American victory in the Revolutionary War, despite the appeal by the former colonists to natural rights philosophy to justify their cause. However, natural rights philosophy and its commitment to human equality would ultimately be used successfully by women to justify their demands for voting rights and for equal treatment under the law. This has been 60 Second Civics, a podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. This was the day that Franklin Roosevelt named Frances Perkins Secretary of Labor. Secretary Perkins was the first woman to hold a cabinet position in the United States government. Perkins brought to her position years of experience advocating for working people. Born in Boston, Perkins attended Mount Holyoke College. She moved to Illinois to become a school teacher. She began spending time at the renowned Hull House Settlement House. At Hull House, Perkins encountered some of the leading fighters for women's rights and workers' safety, while learning from many of the leading labor reformers of her day. From Illinois, Perkins returned east to study economics and sociology, earning her master's degree from Columbia University in New York City. Soon, Perkins became the head of the National Consumers League. While in New York, Perkins witnessed firsthand the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire tragedy. She watched as 146 young girls and women jumped to their deaths to escape the deadly flames, because the doors of the factory were chained shut. The experience profoundly affected Perkins. She would later say the New Deal began on March 25, 1911, the day the Triangle factory burned. She spent the rest of her career working to ensure the conditions that led to the Triangle fire would not be repeated. Perkins played a key role in crafting many parts of Roosevelt's New Deal legislation, including the passage of the Social Security Act. She also worked to pass the National Labor Relations Act, which allowed millions of workers to earn collective bargaining rights for the first time. During her 12 years as Labor Secretary, Perkins forged new ground for the role of women in government as a staunch ally for working people. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States, where it is currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only about 42 to 43 degrees Fahrenheit, currently under cloudy conditions, and we will have occasional rain showers starting, in a couple of hours, and looks like we'll be getting looks like about a 1/15 of an inch. Is that right? Yes. And then showers early tonight with lows in the mid-30s, and we originally had a snowy mix, but now it looks like winds will be light and variable, bringing with it about 1/4 of an inch of rain overnight, and then cloudy skies early on Saturday, followed by partial clearing. Winds will be out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and our temperatures will be maybe a balmy 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County continue. Yes, indeed, you heard that right. Continue to rise. We're taking off our masks, folks. And our infections continue to rise, and so do our deaths. Currently, confirmed cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now risen to 421,033 confirmed cases, and our deceased has risen by 1 and now stands at 481. Pollen is rated as none right outside the window in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the Rogue River region is good at 34 parts per million, and the daytime UV index has inched up in the moderate range to level 4. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.09 inches, visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 46 degrees with a rain shower. Paris is 54 and cloudy. Rome is 53 with rain with a flash flood warning. Kyiv is 34 and cloudy. Kabul is 44 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 64 and clear. Tokyo is 47 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 71 degrees with showers in the vicinity. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees Fahrenheit with a fog advisory. And New York, New York is a crisp 26 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Anonymous staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock called for the UN Human Rights Office to release a report it has compiled on the situation of the Uyghur Muslim minority in China. Baerbock said in a video speech to the 47-nation UN Human Rights Council in Geneva that the global body needs more transparency. We encourage the High Commissioner for Human Rights to publish your report on the detention of members of the Muslim Uyghur community, and we call on Beijing to allow unfettered access, she said. Diplomats in Geneva have said the report on the situation in China's western Xinjiang province has been ready or very close to it for months. UN Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet's office has acknowledged delays in the release.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Trevor Honeycutt of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. President Joe Biden meets his Finnish counterpart Sauli Niinisto at the White House today as Russia's invasion of Ukraine has roused fresh concern for other European countries and raised the prospect that Finland can form a closer alliance with NATO. Finland already cooperates with NATO but is not a member, and support for full membership has grown in the country since Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Biden and Niinisto have spoken to each other twice in the past few months. I'm sorry, my Finnish is terrible. Finns have traditionally been wary of Russia, given the Nordic countries' shared 833-mile border and a history of 2 wars between 1939 and 1944 that cost Finland territory. But Finland, a EU member which was part of the Swedish kingdom until 1809, and then was under Russia's control until gaining independence in 1917, has also sought to preserve friendly relations with Moscow. Russia does not want Finland to join NATO, but Niinisto has said the country retains the right to apply for membership. Finland's government has sought to calm campaigns to join the U.S.-led defense bloc. Niinisto said in a statement that people should keep a cool head and assess carefully the impact of the changes that have already taken place and of those that might still happen. Finland joined other countries yesterday, Thursday, in boycotting Arctic Council meetings that Russia planned to host in May. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up again on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.